Hi, I'm Hannah, and we're going to be talking about renewable versus non-renewable energy resources. So first off, what is renewable energy? Renewable energy is produced from resources that can replenish relatively quicker than they are used. Each resource has different pros and cons, but in general, people usually see it as less harmful to the planet, more expensive to install, and less reliable. Examples that we're going to be looking over are solar, wind, geothermal, hydroelectric, tidal, wave, and algae. With solar energy, active solar energy is used through special technology to capture the solar rays, such as PV cells and mirrors. The PV cells convert the radiation into electricity, and mirrors focus sunlight into a specific spot. Generally, this powers lights, heating systems, computers, televisions, and other electricity you find in one building. Passive solar energy is just harnessed through the way something's structured. There's not really any equipment used. So like windows facing the sun's path to get more heat in, and cool roofs with white paint on the top reflects sunlight to make it cooler. The pros to this are they're very clean for the environment, and PV cells are long lasting, but they are expensive to install. They're hard to predict the input with weather and clouds coming over. They're not continuous because at night you're not taking in energy, and they're not globally accessible because of the amount of daytime different areas of the world get. With wind energy, wind turbines are tall structures with propeller blades that are turned by the wind, and then these blades turn a generator which produce electricity. Wind farms are groups of these wind turbines, and they're usually found in areas where you can find more wind more commonly, such as farmland, narrow mountain passes, and the ocean. This generates electricity for local homes, schools, and other buildings, so a bigger area is powered through wind energy, and it's cheap and it's not damaging to the environment, but it's inconsistent. So you have to have wind for these things to be going, so it's not enough to be the only resource we use. Also, it's dangerous to local bats and birds because the turning is inconsistent, and so they can't get a feel for the speed, and they can often be hit. With geothermal energy, we use the heat underground, and the geothermal heat pumps. Water is piped down, warmed by this geothermal energy, and pumped back up, and this is used to heat houses, sidewalks, and sometimes even parking lots. With steam and power plants, steam is piped up into the plant, and turning a generator, it produces electricity. Now, some areas, this is a very viable option because there's already steam underground and they just have to make a pipe so it can come up. In other areas, they have to inject water underground because that steam's not already there. So this is not damaging to the environment, but because not all areas have that steam, and usually it's drier areas that don't already have that steam down there, pumping the water can use a lot of their resource that they need for drinking and other things. With hydroelectric, it is made by flowing water and harnessed through large dams, and the river flow is manually controlled. It's inexpensive, globally accessible anywhere you can find a river, and reliable. But it is harmful to the environment, even though it's a renewable resource. The large lake, which is called a reservoir that forms behind the dam, drowns the original habitat. And it can sometimes even flood entire towns in which people are forced to move out of their homes. It also only generates electricity from 20 to 30 years because silt from the riverbed builds up and slows the water flow. Less commonly known renewable resources are tidal energy, wave energy, and algae fuel. With tidal energy, ocean tides turn turbine blades. It's very similar to wind energy, but it's more consistent. With wave energy, there's floats that go up and down with waves, and this pumps magnets within wire, and this produces electricity. And algae fuel is very interesting. It is used in place of crude oil and natural gas as a form to make fuel for vehicles. And because algae's weight is 50% oil and it does not contain sulfur, it's non-toxic, highly biodegradable, it's a very clean option to using as fuel, but we have not seen that used as much yet. All right, with non-renewable energy, it's produced from resources that cannot replenish as quickly as they're used. Sometimes they can't replenish at all. With the generalized pros and cons, they're usually less expensive at the beginning and they're consistent and reliable and easily stored, but they're not sustainable because once we use them, they're gone. They're also prone to accidents such as fires, leaks, and explosions, and they cause a lot of pollution. Example resources we'll look at are oil, gas, and coal. With oil, the natural form is called crude oil. And this is a fossil fuel transformed from sea life that died millions of years ago. They sank to the bottom of the ocean, and over years, sedimentary rock formed on top, and the pressure and heat turned it into the matter that is oil-saturated rock. This is used for gas, diesel, and jet fuel, but it has to be refined before we can use it for anything. The steps are it's pumped up and taken to a refinery. This is as it's shown in the ocean, but it can also be in dry land as well. Oil is then stored in tanks until we use it, and then it's cleaned and separated from byproduct through distillation, which is heating the separate oils with different boiling points, and then contaminants such as sulfur are removed. Oil spills are very damaging to ocean life. I say ocean life because it can happen at the extraction point or with the transport with the boats. So it's especially important with ocean life. It kills all of the life in that area. And then the process to extract and refine oil emits large amounts of carbon dioxide into the air. All right, with natural gas, we see it is also a fossil fuel formed by a very similar process to crude oil. It's trapped in layers of rock, and it can be found through observing the surface to understand more about the underground formations. People can create explosions and drop weights to record the sound waves that change as it comes back up, and it measures differences of gravitational pull from different areas with underground rock. The wells to get natural gas up are generally around 9,000 feet down, and they don't even know if the natural gas is there until they already make those wells, which is why they want to be sure that it's a promising area because it's hundreds of dollars per foot. The gas is taken to a processing plant to be cleaned and separated into methane, propane, and butane, and this creates sources for fuel, heat, and light. And the process is very similar to the oil process with refinement. Lots of CO2 emissions, things like that. Methane emissions as well. And with coal, it is also a fossil fuel, but it's not necessarily marine life. It's simply dead plants from 100 to 400 million years ago. It is also buried under dirt and water, heated and pressured, but it was more than likely in a swampy area than an ocean. Coal is used for heating and electricity, and it has the highest carbon level of any fossil fuel. So when we burn coal, that is big carbon emissions. It also creates smog, which is very damaging to our lungs, and it produces mercury, which is very dangerous for wildlife and for us. Ways to get coal are surface mining and underground mining. With surface mining, all sediment, vegetation, and rock that's on top of the coal is removed. And this coal can be up to 200 feet down. So that's 200 feet down that all these things are removed, not even talking about outwards. So that's a lot of land that's being stripped and destroyed. It is a cheaper option than underground mining, but again, this can destroy entire ecosystems, and toxic matter goes into the air and the water supply. With underground mining, they go down a mine shaft to operate large machinery that move coal above ground. And this can go as far as 1,000 feet underground, but it leaves toxic residue from separating the coal, which pollutes the underground water supply. This is also very dangerous for the miners as there's many explosions. You can suffocate where it's so far down there's a lack of oxygen, and the toxic gas exposure such as methane. And that is why methane is often ventilated out for their safety, but this also creates methane emissions. So how do we see these things being used? Oil and gas are refined and used to fuel most vehicles worldwide. Iceland is using geothermal energy for 90% of its electricity. Now, it is an area with more geothermal activity, but Iceland is using its natural renewable resources to its full potential, while other places aren't tapping into it quite as much. With the United States, our primary energy consumption as of 2020 was 35% oil, 34% natural gas, 12% renewable energy. That's all the different renewable energies pushed into that 12%. And then 10% coal and 9% nuclear power, which is another form of very dangerous non-renewable energy. So the consequences we're seeing, carbon emissions, like I said before, are creating a greenhouse effect, which is causing global warming. Sea levels are rising, ice caps melting, we're seeing droughts, we're seeing fires. It's very dangerous across the globe. People are also getting sicker in more industrialized areas because of the amount of dangerous toxins being emitted. And these toxins are also causing acid rain. Clean water supply is also shrinking because of acid runoff into streams, rivers, and lakes. So with that, what can we do about it? First off, we need to care and we need to educate ourselves. We need to be caring about more the long-term benefits and less about the immediate gratification. With renewable energy, it is often more expensive at the beginning, but it can even be cheaper in the long run. We also need to vote and protest to make sure our voices are heard within our country and our state. We also need to support sustainable companies. We can say the things we want to say all day long, but if we're continuing to buy unclean products, then they're still going to keep selling those unclean products. So do the research, find their genuine sustainable companies, and use cleaner products that you're going to be using anyways in your day-to-day life. With that, I have a song that I'll be singing for you. So I'm going to pause the video and come back and I'll have a keyboard. Okay, so sorry for the background. I'm in a different room, and this is a much more pleasant picture than the room. But I'm going to be singing the song Pass It On Down by Alabama, and it just kind of puts into perspective why the things we talked about are important. So I hope you enjoy. Well, we live in the land of the plenty, but many things aren't plenty anymore. Like the water in our sink, they say it's not safe to drink. You gotta go and buy it at the store. Now we're told there's a hole in the ozone. Look what's washing on the beach. And Lord, I believe from the heavens to the seas, bringing Mother Nature to her knees. So let's leave some blue up above us. Let's leave some green on the ground. There's only us tomorrow, so let's save some for tomorrow. Leave it and pass it on down. Well, there's change taking place up on the mountains. Acid rain is falling on the leaves. And down in Brazil, the fires are burning still. How we gonna breathe without those trees? So let's leave some blue up above us. Let's leave some green on the ground. It's only us tomorrow, so let's save some for tomorrow. Leave it and pass it on down. There's a place where I live called the canyon, where my daddy taught me to swim. And that water is so pure, and I'm gonna make sure daddy's grandkids can swim there like him. Now we all have to feel just a little guilty when we look into the eyes of our kids. 'Cause brothers, it's a fact, if we take and not put back, let's save some for tomorrow. Leave it and pass it on down. So let's leave some blue up above us. Let's leave some green on the ground. It's only ours to borrow, so let's save some for tomorrow. Leave it and pass it on down. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. And I hope you feel at least a little inspired.